Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film would become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello guys, welcome back to the podcast for part 2 as we are talking Lord of the Rings movies as the War of the Rohirrim is out in the cinemas and the theaters, as you guys call it. As you already know by now, surely in our last episode of the year, this is the part where we have a look at your Instagram responses from the previous episode. And that previous episode was on Ridley Scott films 2, the sequel. Only a few responses this week, but any response is great. Heather J. Stewart said, overall, it's Alien, and from his later filmography, The Martian. Anton Kinelov, our regular responder, went with Alien as well, which is the correct answer. One of my favorite films of all time. Brian, I'm curious, what is your Ridley Scott film of choice for you, sir?
Alien is number 2 for me.
Okay.
I will say it is the best Alien movie.
Correct answer.
I do not like Aliens.
Whoa.
In fact, yeah. I don't like the direction James Cameron took it. I think Fincher was trying to do the correct thing in 3 and kind of almost reset it back to its roots. I'm a defender of 3 as well. Okay. I think it's the second best Alien movie. But
okay.
Yeah, I know.
That's
take.
An opinion.
James Cameron, it's weird. All of his work, none of it clicks with me fully. There's something about it where I guess my sensibilities and his don't mesh. Outside of the first Terminator, I don't click with his work. But the first Alien is great. However, it is not my favorite Ridley Scott. My favorite Ridley Scott is Gladiator. Nice. It was one of those movies I saw as like a 12 or 13-year-old boy. And it's like, I'm not a cinephile yet. Like, I've seen some movies, but it was one of those, like, first time you're seeing, like, the grown-up movie. And the grown-up movie kicks a lot of ass. And it's like, all right, I like this. And, like, it's just such a well-done, entertaining movie. For my show, Reviewing History, it was the first movie we did on the show. It was the first thing we covered, going through how historically true it is. It's not true at all, but I still love it.
You don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you seen Napoleon? Apparently that's very iffy with its history as well. But
I actually want to do it in this coming year. We haven't done it yet. I have this, I don't know much about it, but from what I understand, it kind of mocks Napoleon about a lot, and it almost makes him a joke. And my thought process on it is, I haven't seen it yet, but I think, and this is weird to say, I think Ridley Scott is carrying on the great British tradition of mocking Napoleon, and people aren't fully getting it because, like, the thing everyone associates Napoleon with is being, like, grotesquely short, and it's like, no, all that shit comes from British propaganda against him. So I almost feel like if the whole thing is just a hit piece on Napoleon, it's like the last bit of British propaganda against Napoleon. And I kind of like it for that. I haven't seen it yet, though, so I can't say.
Yeah, apparently, like, Ridley Scott was literally changing the script because of what Joaquin Phoenix was doing with his performance. Like, he changed the script through that. So, yeah, I've not seen it yet, but I'm fascinated to see it. Very mixed reviews. Same with mixed reviews for Gladiator 2 as well. Again, frustrated I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
What did you make of Gladiator 2?
I really liked Gladiator 2 a lot. The biggest problem it has is that it's not the first Gladiator.
Yeah.
It's you watch it and you're like, okay, it's fine, but it's lacking a lot of the elements that go underrated in the first Gladiator you don't think about. So one of the best things in Gladiator is there's that sense of brotherhood and camaraderie that builds between Russell Crowe and Digimon Hansu and all the slave guys. This film doesn't have that element.
Right.
And it never really hits the emotional high notes of that first movie, and that's what it's lacking. And it's at its worst when it's trying to connect itself to the original.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. Yeah, I think when this was announced, I mean, this sequel definitely doesn't need to be here in the world, definitely not. But I'm not like sad that we have it. Like, it's still like I still really want to see it, and it's cool that Ridley Scott has made it. Do we need it? No, but I don't really care. I really want to see it still. Apparently, it treads a lot of like the same ground as the first film is, but at the end of the day, it's like a Gladiator film. It's kind of you have to follow some sort of the same beats to achieve what's on the tin. So yeah, but we are talking Lord of the Rings movies, and it is your film up next, sir. What film did you go for, Brian?
I picked Lord of the Rings: Return of the King.
Nice.
In my opinion, the highlight of the entire franchise, and where they should have stopped making Lord of the Rings.
I thought you loved the Hobbit movies. They're awesome. Yeah, it's just insane that they like Peter Jackson like continues this style of making these 3-hour huge epics and still makes it a trilogy out of a really thin book, like this thin, an inch-sized book, you know.
That's the Hobbit's biggest problem, is that he stretched it way too thin. It didn't need to be that. If you wanted to stretch it, you could have done it in 2 parts. You know?
Or just one. One would have been fine, I think.
You could do one, but if you really wanted to get every detail from the book and you wanted to be slavishly accurate, you could have done it in 2 parts. You didn't need 3 parts. But did you see it when it came out in the high frame rate?
No. Absolutely not.
I did.
Right. It was
weird.
Yeah, I don't see why filmmakers really go for that. I just don't think it enhances the film experience at all, really.
Well, it was new at the time, so you know, I wanted
no
to
one
see
uses
the new
it
technology.
anymore, do they?
I think the last time was Gemini Man.
Yeah, and the thing with like the high frame rate stuff is that it just, if you're going to use like visual effects in your film, it really shows it. They got to be damn fucking good, otherwise it's just going to show it up really bad, and it did apparently. So was it always Return of the King for you then, at the 3? Not tempted by the other
Towers.
2? Yeah.
It was Two Towers. It was never Fellowship. Fellowship was never in the running. Two Towers did have its moment, though, but I just got to give it... Because Two Towers is just basically action for like almost 3 hours. So like, I enjoy it for that. And I get why it's not people's favorite for that reason. But Return of the King has all the great action. It has the epic battles, and it has the emotional moments. And I love like themes, and I love that this is the movie that makes it crystal clear what the ring is, what it actually represents, and what the story is telling about power. And like, it drives home the metaphor in a crystal clear way about rulership and leadership and power, you know, and that's why I love this one so much.
Awesome. So what happens in Return of the King, Brian?
In Return of the King, we are at the final stage of Frodo and Samwise's journey to throw the ring into the fires of Mordor, with Gollum or Smeagol, depending on his moment, trailing with them. And you have the other contingent of characters trying to they're basically trying to save Gondor from the Steward of Gondor, almost.
Yeah, from extinction, yeah.
Exactly.
And then they basically distract Sauron with another battle at the Black Gates of Mordor, so Frodo and Sam can cross the plains of Mordor and chuck the ring in Mount Doom. And it's just not as simple as that. So initial reactions for me, yeah, I again like really, really fucking love this film. I mean, I love all of them really. You know, as we said, very lukewarm on the Hobbit movies, but yeah, this one, I just don't think you can get as epic a film as this. Sometimes I honestly can't think of anything really that gets this epic throughout a really long period of time. Like literally the last like hour and a half is just pure epicness, if that's a word. So good. And yeah, I was very teary a few moments towards the end in that last half an hour. Yeah, it's just really powerful, the fact that you go through this whole journey of 9 hours and just really cathartic at the end. Really great stuff from Peter Jackson. Directing, then, lots to talk about in this one. Like, I think the directing from Peter Jackson in the beginning is very like expansive. In the first hour, you have this very like grand nature feel as well. Like the pace is slower, I think, in my opinion, while the pieces are put in play with this giant battle to come. I love how you get this like feeling of how large in scale the enemy is, where you have this great like green sky beam from Minas Noogle with the endless like line of orcs coming out of the dead city. But you also have this like grand nature with like the sense of hope too, where you have this like brilliantly like sweeping landscape shots showing off New Zealand when the beacons are lit, you know, for Gondor to send help from Rohan. You have a lot of like sweeping shots in Lord of the Rings throughout all the films, but here there's like a bit more of like a narrative thrust to it in a fairly long sequence for what it is, I feel like. But I must say, I do feel sorry for the guys just waiting by these huge beacons on these mountaintops. I'm like, what do they do all day, all these years?
That's an easy
waiting.
job.
Yeah. Pay must be good, yeah.
Yeah. You hang out on a mountaintop. Oh, it's lit. All right, I guess I do something now.
Yeah. It's one of those jobs where you kind of like just forget what your job is until it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're playing cards all day and you're like, oh, what? Yeah, I love that, you know, they use like those giant landscape shots and they're showing you how big these armies are and how big the threat is. And this is really the high point of these style of battles in all of cinema for me. It never has reached these heights again. You know, we had like this golden era from like Braveheart and, you know, that whole like 90s run of big epic battles. And even I'd include like I'll include all the Lord of the Rings movies, but this is kind of like that final crescendo of that era. You know, I could include Troy in that. Even Alexander has some good battles, but this is like the end of that, where it's like the height of filmmaking using practical blended with CG to really increase the size of the armies. It's done perfectly here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the CGI definitely still holds up in all three. You can notice it a little bit more in this film when, like, all the dead green dudes come to save the day. That stuff is a little, like, shonky a little bit, but not, like, massively, I wouldn't say. But it doesn't take you out of the film, let's say. You know, it's still really great. I found like the action in Osgiliath like really interesting, where it's like the first battle where our heroes kind of lose, it feels like. You know, it starts off very quickly as like the orcs in their boats drift very slowly in the dark, and you get all like these long panning shots across the ruined pillars of the city, and you see like the Gondorians hide behind the pillars. Then it's like a World War II movie almost, where like the orcs land at the city, and almost immediately you get this sense that they're completely overwhelmed before they even come out of hiding. You know, then when we come back to that battle, cut back to it, you get this sense of being like overwhelmed again when the Nazgul arrive on these giant creatures, and you get these like big spinning shots at a high angle, seeing the Nazgul cause carnage. That was beautifully done for me. Then when like Faramir rides out later to his death, it's not this feeling of like being overwhelmed anymore. It's this feeling of inevitability that he will die here. I found it interesting that it's intercut with like Pippin's singing an emotional song, and the song is like the most prominent sound in the sequence, but like sharply countered in thankfully short bursts by like the quite disgusting sound of the Steward of Gondor, played by John Noble, stuffing his face. And when like Faramir and his men are like riding, all you hear is like the distant almost hum and rumble of the horses riding, then the sound of like the orcs releasing their arrows, then that's it, But I think it fits like the somber tone that we, don't see them all die, So yeah, everything with kind of Faramir in those particular moments are really interesting from a directional point of view from Peter Jackson, that he's really kind of changing it up a little bit with how he wants to portray this, a lot more somber and a bit more like, this is going to be really tough. Certainly that whole sequence is just like, the hope is kind of fading a little bit, and like this is a huge task ahead of them.
Yeah, I love how like hopeless everything feels, and it feels like there's no way out of this because they're so outnumbered. Yeah. They're completely pinned down. It looks like they have no way to win, and I love the solution that they come to, even though it's really not built up too well. It's like, hey, there's this ghost army over here. You should go get them. He's like, oh yeah, it's a good idea. It's like,
yeah.
It does kind of come out of nowhere, and I know some people hate that, but it always works for me. I think it's cool. I think it ties into also the themes that the movie is talking about as far as power and stuff, because again, other leaders like weren't willing to forgive them of their oath and to like honor them and like give them a shot at retribution. Aragon is. He's willing to let these ghosts redeem themselves. So it ties into what the movie is really all about. So I love the scope of the battles. I love the way everything is shot. And even the quiet moments, especially at the end, like there's so many little moments that I know they get me choked up, and I'm sure they get other people. Like, you bow to no one. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Every time. Yeah, when he says, no, my friends, you bow to no one. It's like, oh my God. Stop, Aragon. So good. It's interesting, though, when we get, like, the opening moments of, like, the Battle of Minas Tirith, tonally, it's really interesting in how he approaches the opening moments. Like, you, of course, get some, like, big sweeping shots of, like, the orc army, but I found it interesting where Denethor, the Steward of Gondor, is like grieving for Faramir, even though he's not dead at this point. Well, he doesn't die in the film, and basically gives up and tells everyone to flee. And you have like this incredible shot that passes over the top of the city to reveal like the hundreds of thousands of orcs at their door, and you're like, holy shit, that's a lot of orcs. Then before you know it, like Gandalf knocks him out, which is quite funny to me. And then when you have these moments where they fire these like huge boulders from the city and vice versa, you get you just hear like this squishing sound of orcs being well squished. And the white like orc moves out the way of one boulder landing right next to him, which is pretty funny, I found. But then when like you have like the chaos of the sweeping shots of the Nazgul attacking and the chaotic handheld camera like showing people panicking, and these kind of huge dudes, not quite dwarves, trolls.
Trolls.
Yeah, but they're like they're all armored up and with like huge hammers, like they're causing chaos, literally knocking people like they're nothing. Then you have like the big epic cool nature of like Gandalf like kicking ass with his sword and twirling his staff. So just a great mix of tones to get you through like this huge battle scene. It's not all like kind of one just piece of carnage of a battle. It's just there's some funny moments, there's some really stylish moments with Gandalf, and there's some really chaotic stuff as well. So yeah, I think it's just really well handled by Peter Jackson.
Yeah, and you get all the cool moments, you get the character moments, you get the big epic moments, even like you said, that Orc Gam, the moment where he's standing there and the thing flies away. I love the moment where the Steward of Gondor is lit on fire and he runs off the cliff and the camera pans out and you see how small and insignificant he is. It's tying into that, to what the movie's about. Again, this was a guy who's not capable of rule. He's not capable of power. He'd rather let everybody in Gondor die than try to fight or have someone else take the reins. He'd rather see the whole thing leveled than like hand power off to Aragorn or Gandalf. And I love Gandalf rallying the troops,
Yeah.
He's rolling through and he's like, don't go fight, stand on your ground, all that. And it's awesome. He's directly contradicting the weak leadership. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's just quite fitting that the fact that Gandalf kind of just takes him out in like a funny way as well. He just doesn't deserve to be like, have an honorable death or an honorable like takedown kind of thing. Like, no, you're being really stupid. Like, piss off. We need to be serious now and like defend this goddamn city the best way we can. And it ain't with you.
You're a hindrance. You gotta go.
Yeah. I mean, I loved pretty much all of the Battle of Minas Tirith. Like, I loved how like epic, like the Riders of Rohan literally crash into the Orc army.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen like horse riding look this fast and fierce on screen before. It's so quick. But I love like the storytelling with like the giant elephant action as well. Because when they arrive, you're like, how the hell are they going to defeat these guys? When they charge at the giant elephants, like the elephants are like happy playing golf with these Riders of Rohan using their tusks. So you're like, they're just getting like mowed down here. And I love how they give like the elephant riders some personality when they're like crushing people. But then I loved like how Carl Urban gets a moment where he spears one of the riders, and the elephant kind of collides with another one. That was epic. Then when Eowyn rides between like the legs of one and cuts the legs and it falls to its death, which I thought was a little easy to take one out, but I guess it was a little one, I think, but still cool.
Yeah, and I love the comedic moment with Legolas and Gimli, where Legolas kicks all this ass, he takes one down, and Gimli goes, "It's still only one." It's funny. I love their relationship.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I think it's definitely better in Two Towers, I think, because they're kind of counting more, aren't they? They're counting their kills. There's only a few moments in this one, but yeah, just the way like Legolas like kills that huge elephant was awesome. Really cool. Like the way he just like climbs up, cuts the saddle thing off the elephant and like uses it to like pull himself up onto the top of it, kills a load of people on it, and then gets 3 arrows out and just like shoots the elephant in the head. That was so cool. And then literally just like slides down the trunk, and then he says, "Still only counts as one." Which I think is a bit harsh. It's huge. I think that should be at like 10, maybe.
I mean, Gimli wants to win. I get it. I would say that's just 1, too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to win here.
Yeah. But I think overall, though, I would still probably say like the Battle of Helm's Deep is probably the best battle of the trilogy. Would you agree or not?
I love Helm's Deep. You get really well done logistics and all that, but I don't think Helm's Deep has the emotional moments this one does, which is why I think this one is better, and I think this one is tied more directly into the theme of the entire piece, whereas Helm's Deep is really cool action and it's a fantastic battle. I think this one has more emotional beats, and again, it's tied into the central metaphor of the movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think with like Helm's Deep, it feels kind of not necessarily grander, but like it feels dirtier, it feels messier. in Helm's Deep, and I think it has a very similar level of epicness for sure. The action is incredible, and there's also a sense in like the Battle of Helm's Deep that you just don't know who is going to win this battle as well, whether they're actually going to survive this. Whereas I guess in like this one, because you know that, you know, Aragorn is probably going to win over the dead dudes, that they're going to win. And it is kind of the last movie. So, you know, they probably will win. There is an element of that. Whereas in like Helm's Deep, you're just like, I'm not sure who's going to live, who's going to die here. This is the middle movie. So the stakes almost feel a little higher in Helm's Deep. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying, yeah.
I can see what you're saying. It's also, you know, this is kind of the end game. You know, if they lose here, the whole thing's over. So they kind of have to win here. And I love the way the Nazgul are handled. I love how Eowyn finally kills him, where it's like, you know, the two weakest people almost technically are the ones that beat him. It's like, is it Pippin or Merry? I forget which one, but Merry, he hits him from behind. He falls to his knee, and, you know, I am no man, and she stabs him in the head. It's awesome. It's great.
Yeah. And even I love the fact that when he comes off the, whatever you call it, the beast, this huge thing with wings and a huge neck, and he just feels like huge, the Witch King. And he has, like, the massive mace that he has just feels huge and really heavy. Yeah. And you feel like, Eowyn has, like, no chance here.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that the choreography in that is pretty simple as well, and simple and powerful. They don't mess about with it. Yeah, really great epic moment for sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of Macbeth too, where it's like, you know, what's it called? No man born of a woman can defeat me. It's like that wordplay thing. No man can defeat me.
Yeah.
And I love the shot of her when she reveals her helmet. And it's like, oh, it's this beautiful chick, and, you know, she stabs him right in his head, and he like collapses in on himself. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. I was kind of expecting like a bit of an explosion though. I don't know. Like the way like the tower, the eye tower explodes.
Yeah.
He just like shrivels, doesn't he? Yeah. And they cut away quick so it doesn't look stupid. Like in the final battle, I like how like the style of the filmmaking kind of sort of matches up to Frodo and Sam with like the battle at the Black Gates kind of thing. Like the initial battle feels very intense and chaotic, and it's the same sort of style of directing when like Gollum attacks Sam and Frodo, very kind of chaotic at the same time. And there's also moments when like Frodo and Aragorn sort of fall at the same time at one point. And it definitely feels like the first time like two separate scenes feel very connected to each other for the first time, which I really liked. I don't think either scene does anything particularly special in terms of action, I wouldn't say, but like they feel really connected from a directional point of view. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, especially I think everything feels at that point like, obviously the stakes are super high at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It's the climactic battle. The fate of Middle Earth is in the balance. So I think you get all those emotional moments, but you have two characters who are, one is literally facing down a giant army, and the other is facing, you know, a difficult
big uphill
choice and this burden that he has to do. And you get two characters willing to give up everything for Frodo. You get Sam, you know, I can't carry the ring, but I can carry you, and he's carrying him up the hill, and it's great. And you have Aragorn on the ground for Frodo rallying this army for this little hobbit. And the action isn't like anything too spectacular.
They've done all that already.
Exactly. It's like, you're not going to top what you've done. So now we're just trying to hit those great emotional moments. And I think it does successfully.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the first time you're watching, you're really not ready for Gollum to show back up. You think they're kind of done with him.
Mm.
And when he shows back up and they wrap up his story where he pays the price for his greed, it all works fantastic. And the cutting works too.
Oh yeah. That's definitely the scene where the cutting feels so organic and the themes all kind of tied together and the characters almost kind of tied together even though they're not in the same place. Well, they're both in Mordor, but like, you know what I mean? Like, they're all very much in the end game and trying to do what's necessary to destroy the ring. But my favorite scene is not a battle scene, technically, but as I'm a horror guy, I had to go with this scene. I love my horror films. You'll probably guess where I'm going with this. I love the Shelob sequence. With the giant spider. I love how like Gollum leads Frodo into the tunnels, and Peter Jackson does like a great job of putting you in Frodo's shoes or hairy feet, if you will, where you're thinking like the exact same thing. Where the hell did Gollum go? Then I love the classic like frantic panning camera trying to find something that's not there in trying to look for Shelob. It's a very classic technique and definitely overused in cinema and generally, but works perfectly here. Like, I love the little moment where like Frodo gets the little like magic light out, and there's like a wide shot which has Frodo slightly off center with like the negative space behind him, and if you look closely, you can see like Shelob's like front talons before she moves. Like the chase is great, but when like Frodo gets caught in the web and Shelob like slowly approaches, that was very good. Like especially from a lighting sense, very creepy for me. Like then the fight between like Sam and Shelob, I thought was really well done. I think a fight between like a hobbit and a giant spider on paper could and should look stupid. But I think like the choreography like worked pretty well for me, and they worked that out pretty smoothly. Plus I love the part where Shelob like stalks Frodo and she like barely makes a sound, and I loved it when like Shelob's stinger comes into shot, like Frodo turns around and then it's gone, and then in literally the same moment like the stinger comes back and jabs him. Yeah, I loved all that. Just seeing like a giant spider on screen was just pretty cinematic and just like, wow, we are in pure horror mode here.
It's a really cool sequence. Shelob feels like a serious threat. It also builds up Gollum as well, because like he knows his way around. He knows how like things work, and she's so evil and he's so evil and deceivious, and you know, she feels like a threat. Like it feels like if she gets you at one of those things, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. So that whole sequence is really, really good, and it's smart to have, you know, Frodo get affected, because now we know the stakes when Sam shows up.
Yeah. I also kind of love the design, the little details that they put on the design of Shelob. The fact that, you know, this is a character with a lot of eyes, and you can see some of like the scarring around the eyes that she's lost a few through a lot of battles in trying to kill her prey, you know. So that was quite an interesting detail with the design.
Yeah, Shelob's probably been out that a long, long time.
Yeah. Always hungry. What's your favorite scene or shot for you?
I gotta say, the scene with you bow to no one. I love that. And my other favorite moment is I never thought I'd die side by side with an elf. What about a friend? That I can do.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. So directing score for me, it's pretty exceptional. Just in like the scale of everything. The scale is like massive in this movie. So there's not a lot of like criticism really, to be honest. I loved everything with Frodo and Sam, like their whole journey, their final journey through to throwing the ring into Mount Doom. You feel like they're in constant danger the whole time. And yeah, that Shelob sequence, incredible. And obviously the battle scenes with Aragorn and Gandalf and Merry and Pippin, like, just off the scale, huge. And for the most part, like, the CG holds up for sure. So I'll go like 9.6 for me. How about you, sir?
Yeah. I gotta go 10.
Wow.
I love it. I think it's perfect. I wouldn't change a second of this movie. It makes me want to cry several times, and I think it's the delicate, touch of the direction, because I think a scene like I Am No Man could easily be cringe inducing, like the sequence in Endgame when she goes, "She's not alone," and it makes everybody want to cringe every time, like the forced shot of all the girls. So this is it handled in the proper way, where it's like, oh, you could show a powerful female and you could have it be an emotionally resonant moment,
Yeah.
Whereas the other direction, just like, I don't think I've ever heard anybody like that moment. This is the exact opposite. Everyone loves this moment. So I think it just shows how well Peter Jackson is operating here.
Absolutely. No faults from Brian. Screenplay, then. The first hour definitely feels like Peter Jackson is putting the chess pieces in place, if you will. There's definitely like a sense of things to come where you have like Pippin seeing into the future from the seeing stone that Saruman had in Isengard. He sees like Gondor in flames, and Gandalf is like Sauron is moving his forces to Gondor to end the world of men for good, and how Gondor and Rohan are going to, like, how are they going to unite, as they're not the best of friends at this point at the beginning of the movie. And it's the same with like Gollum and Smeagol talking to each other in the water, planning to like lead Frodo and Sam into Shelob's lair. So I love kind of the planning and scheming in the first hour. Like, you get this sense that things are building to something epic.
I love the Smeagol backstory too, which is almost like a prologue to the movie. But again, I love the way that's handled so much, because it's establishing everything about that character,
Yeah, because you assume, like, through the prologue in Fellowship that Smeagol, like, picks it up from the river, but it wasn't. It was his friend, and he literally fought his friend and killed his friend to actually get it. It has that amount of power, and that actually this character is quite a weak character, a very mentally weak character, that he immediately falls in love with it, and wants it, regardless of what his friend is doing. It's like, I don't care about you anymore. I want this ring.
Yeah, nothing is more important than this ring to me. And I will become a grotesque, like, half-naked or fully naked creature in a loincloth as long as I have the ring.
Yeah, I like clothes more, thanks. I'm good. It's really interesting with this film because, like, they're juggling a lot of storylines, and I think it's done really well here in this film, because by the time we get to this third film in the story, like, we spent so much time in their company of these characters, and all of them are really compelling to watch at this point, starting the third film. So when we cut to Frodo and Sam, or to Aragorn, or to Gandalf and Pippin, you're not like disappointed saying, can we please go back to the interesting characters, which for me often happens in films when they, split off groups of characters in movies. It happens a lot these days, but like, I never really got that sense that I was missing Gandalf, or I was missing Frodo or Aragorn, because all of them have their own unique shit that they've gone through and they've just gone through so much, and they're just really more interesting because of it. And I just never got that feeling that I was missing each one. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's follow Aragorn for a bit now. Oh, okay, Frodo and Sam, yeah, let's get into it. It was really well judged for me with how they balanced all the stories. Yeah,
it's also that thing where it's like, everything every character is doing at this point is so well done. It's so not well done. I mean, it is well done, but is so important to the world and the story. Like, every decision is the fate of the world. You know,
Yeah.
every little thing matters. So it's like everything is just ratcheted up because of that. And I think that really aids its favor. And then you couple it with just great emotional moments that, like, it's fantastic that way. I think the movie has maybe one too many endings, but I get we spent so much time, we want to wrap everything up. But I can forgive it because if you made the audience sit through, a 9-hour ordeal, you should wrap everything up as much as possible. But is it needed? Probably not, but I get it. Close every thread for the audience.
Yeah. It's always been a controversial thing, isn't it, with Return of the King? Like, there's just so many endings. A lot of people joke about it, but I think with the gravitas of what all these characters have gone through, I feel like it earns the length of the ending for me. Like, I mean, there's a lot of slow-mo as well, like with Gandalf, like, well, when all the characters kind of come in to see Frodo again in bed, and you're like, that's literally all done in slow-mo. Just to create this huge, overwhelming moment that, like, yeah, they've done it, and Frodo has survived. And then they kind of go to the Shire. Oh, yeah, no, then it's the Gondor moment where he says, "My friends, you bow to no one." I always get really emotional at that point because it's so well done, because you've got all this pomp and ceremony for Aragorn. Aragorn has fulfilled his destiny. He's become the king of Gondor. Like, they're all there for him, really. And for then Aragorn to say, no. These guys are the people you need to be bowing to, people. And it's just like, whoa. It's just quite an incredible moment emotionally. The moment, for sure, emotionally.
Yeah, I think I think it's a couple of things. I think it's the emotional highlight of the entire series. I also think, again, it's everything in this. You can tie it back to the metaphor of the ring and power, right?
Yeah.
So the ring has been destroyed, power is, like, destroyed, but there's still going to be a leader, right? And the only leader that is capable of being a good leader is one who didn't want to lead and was kind of forced to, Aragorn. And the first thing he does as a leader is say, no, what's really important are these guys, these little people. That's actually what's important. And my first act as a leader is to bow down to them.
Yeah.
And it's just tied again to that metaphor of leadership, and it's showing why he's gonna, we can presume an effective king and ruler for Gondor and Middle Earth.
Yeah, he's able to recognize that these guys were far more important in destroying the ring and getting himself into the position he is as the king of Gondor than himself. Really, when you think about it. So yeah, he totally recognizes that, and it's such a great moment. And then we kind of go into the Shire. I think that's where maybe people are kind of complaining, probably, is I think there's too much Shire stuff at the end. I always kind of feel it's a bit odd that, well, not odd, but it's weird that we kind of end on Sam, that with his family. I get it to a certain extent, because Frodo's like, I've left pages for you for your story, but like, what adventures is he going on now? I think he's very settled with his wife and family. Like, I think he's adventured out.
I don't see Sam ever leaving the Shire again.
No, absolutely not. He's very happy and content right at the end there. But yeah, maybe like shave down a little bit more of like the Shire stuff. It goes on a bit too long, maybe, but that's just my personal take, I guess.
Yeah, no, I could agree with that. But again, it's like, if we sat through 9 hours, like, whatever at this point, you know what I mean? Like, everyone is committed.
Yeah. Favorite lines? There are so many. I kind of love a lot of the stuff with Gollum / Smeagol, and when they're talking to each other, and they say, when they're talking about like leading Frodo and Sam to Shelob, and they're like, all she gets is filthy orcses, and they doesn't taste very nice, does they, precious? No, not very nice at all, my love. Which is great. One good one from Gandalf when he's riding with Pippin to Gondor, And he's like, run, Shadowfax, show us the meaning of haste. And they go. That was cool. Have you got any, Brian?
I mean, I
Other
have
than
the
the
chalk.
obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I have the obvious ones, where, you know, side by side with a friend, I am no man,
Yeah.
you bow to no one. I mean, those are the moments that really stick with me. But again, I do, like, as a comedic moment, I do love It Only Counts as One,
Yeah.
with Gimli and Legolas. And, you know, it shows how far those characters have kind of come with each other, you know? And then it pays off again with the emotional line at the end. So.
Yeah, there's a few other funny ones I really like when Aragorn is like, no, I'm going to go into the mountain on my own to find the dead king or whatever. And Legolas is like, haven't you learned nothing of the stubbornness of dwarves? You might as well accept it. We're coming with you, laddie. Which is cool. I loved Gollum when he's discovered that like Frodo is stuck in the web and he's like, naughty little fly, why does it cry? Caught in a web, soon you'll be eaten. I just love the fact that he changes it up like right at the end and sounds like really deep when he says eaten. Very menacing.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, and I love the Witch King near the end when he kind of kills Theoden, King Theoden, and he's like, feast on his flesh.
Very Evil Dead.
Yeah. And then he's like to Eowyn, you fool, no man can kill me. Die now. Stab. I am no man. Stab.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah. What else we got? Oh, another Gimli one. After the Battle of Minas Tirith, and they're planning the next battle to distract Mordor's army so Frodo and Sam can cross to the Mount of Doom. And he's like, certainty of death, small chance of success. What are we waiting for? It's awesome too. Oh yeah, one you mentioned already. Come on, Mr. Frodo, I can't carry you. I can't
carry the ring, but I can't
carry it for you, but I can carry you. Yeah, absolutely butchered that. But my favorite one, is the classic. That certainly counts as one. Of course. Screenplay score for me. Oh, it's a tough one. Obviously, very high again. I think what's just great about this screenplay is just obviously how like epic it feels. That, you know, that goes without saying, really. But I think it's just such a great job of how they've adapted like the final section of the book, Return of the King, of just like keeping all these characters like feel very present, and you're not ever missing any particular character, and you're like, oh, we haven't seen this character for a while. You never get that sense, I don't think. Yeah, so many great lines. The epic feel is so good, and you know, slight quibble with the endings, but only very slight. Like, I don't mind it being as long as it is, but I would literally only shave like a minute, maybe. Like 30 seconds, if that, you know. So I'll go like a 9.2, just because of the epic feel, great lines, and just how well balanced it is in the end.
I'm going to go 9.8. I love... Okay. Really, what I love about this one is it drives home the metaphor of the entire piece of work. It clearly states everything you need to know about the ring, its relationship to power, what the text is saying about power in general, who should be leading. It's all in this movie. I love all the character moments, the epic stuff. It hits everything I could want. It gets me to cry. I can't, give anything a higher mark. If you get me to have a genuine emotion, you deserve a high score. So
you're not a crier though in movies.
I am, but you have to really earn it.
It certainly does here.
Earn it. Yeah, exactly. And here it's not like one where I'm bawling. It's like, it's like one single tear, Yeah.
I mean, one movie this year, The Iron Claw, I was bawling. I was like, oh my God, this is so tragic. Right. Acting then for Return of the King. Andy Serkis in that prologue that you mentioned, Brian, is so amazing in that opening flashback where before like he sees the ring, he still has some of that like Smeagol Gollum like high-pitched voice to him, which I found really interesting. I love how he has like a little moment, a little bit of that arched posture too. So I loved how well like judged that particular performance is. So you're not like, well, it's the same actor, that's cool. No, Serkis has really thought about like how this character moves and talks before he's corrupted by the ring. Then when he kind of transforms into Gollum through this montage, it's pretty scary stuff, actually. It's very freaky, like with some of those like prosthetics as well. Like it reminded me a lot of like the creatures from The Descent, which I saw far too young. You can really like feel the pain in his eyes a few times in those shots when he is transforming. Like, yeah, incredible from Andy Serkis. And obviously, this isn't the height of like motion capture filmmaking. It's all very kind of new, I would say, I think. So, a lot of like what Andy Serkis is doing is very much a physical performance and like what he, and with the dialogue. And I think a lot of what he was doing with his face is digitally replicated. It's more digital than what actually Andy Serkis is doing, I think, compared to his work in the Planet of the Apes movies. But saying that, like, it's still an incredible, like, physical performance through Two Towers and this one, for sure. Like, to be in some of those squatted positions is, I certainly couldn't do that for that long period of time.
Oh, yeah. He probably should have been nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
He is so phenomenal in these, doing that motion capture work and playing that character. It's become iconic. They brought him back for the Hobbit movies. And, I think he's voicing him for a video game they're doing, if I'm correct. I think they're doing a Gollum video game. I might be wrong on that, but I thought they were. But yeah, that's like become an iconic character. And really it's because of him, because in lesser hands, he's just a throwaway little ugly creature, And here he became something more, and he's a symbol for greed and everything else.
I think they are doing like new Lord of the Rings films as well, like the search for Gollum, I think, during the period in Fellowship of the Ring, where like Gandalf kind of hunts for him. I think you don't really see any of that in Fellowship, obviously. So hopefully we might see more of Andy Serkis in those ones. But yeah, see what happens with that. But yeah, Andy Serkis is so good. I mean, I remembered like doing like at school, like pretending to be Gollum, freaking people out. I was that weird kid at school. Yeah, that was always fun. Trying to do the voice badly. Billy Boyd as Pippin, I thought was amazing in this film. Definitely his best performance out of the whole trilogy for me. In some ways, you could say he's kind of like the emotional heart of the Minas Tirith stuff, all those sequences, really. I mean, when he is singing that beautiful song when Faramir, where you think he's going to his death, that I think that's just really beautifully put together and really highlights his acting ability of Billy Boyd. And even when he's just like freaking out when he's holding like the Seeing Stone, when it's kind of locked on his hands, that was a great like freak out performance from him.
Yeah, his performance there is great. I love that song. I love that moment. I love Merry and Pippin in general. I always find them very watchable, and I find them to be some of the more engaging characters in the series. Honestly, I love those two.
Yeah, really relatable. Yeah, definitely. Sean Astin, I think, is great in this film as well, and I loved his little scene with Frodo after he saved Frodo from these like orcs. That it's revealed that Sam has took the ring from Frodo for safekeeping, as he says. I loved how like Sean Astin like hesitates in giving the ring back to Frodo, and at first it looks like he's got a lot of guilt on his face that he's taken the ring from Frodo, but then there's a few moments where it looks like he wants it for himself before Frodo snatches it from his hands, and you don't expect that from Sam at all, and you think he's always like this emotional rock for Frodo on this journey. And it's interesting that Peter Jackson doesn't cut away to Frodo too much to see his reaction to this. Like the focus is all on Sam in this moment, and where his mind is at. And it just gives you this slight like doubt in Sam's loyalty to Frodo. Just a slight doubt. And you're like, could something dodgy happen? Of course it doesn't as soon as Gollum comes back, but it's just a really interesting moment to really show how powerful this ring is.
Yeah, the ring is, is everything, and like Frodo is like, oh, that's mine. Like at that moment you could kind of start doubting, is Frodo actually going to throw this in there? You can kind of see the groundwork for it there.
I mean, Elijah Wood as well is incredible.
Oh, he's so good
in this movie. Like, you can really feel that he has traveled such a long way and that he's so thirsty and hungry. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if literally Peter Jackson didn't feed him this whole time and just gave him bread and water. That was it for the two actors. But yeah, like, it's just so good. I just love all those little moments when he does decide to like keep it for himself at the top of Mount Doom in the volcano, and you're like, oh, those are some evil eyes there. They were very convincing that you really feel like he has completely turned. Yeah, that was a really kind of quite an emotional, kind of shocking moment when he turns a little bit. Like some people say is like emotionally dissatisfying the fact that he does decide to keep it, and the only reason that the ring gets destroyed is because Gollum like tries to take it from him, and they kind of both fall off the side. But again, I think it's just, you can tell it in both performances. Yes, Gollum is mostly digital with the face acting with that character, but like you can just feel that greed has completely taken over for both of them. And then it's just kind of Sam saving Frodo at the end. But yeah, it's really interesting, that decision, but it still feels like an emotional, like, holy shit moment when Frodo gives you these evil eyes.
And it's also like he needs to pay a toll almost, it's like he needs to suffer just a bit more, and it's like you need to give up your finger in order to get rid of this thing because you weren't strong enough to just throw it away. It's like you have to pay a little.
Even when he's like paid so much already, it feels like.
Yeah. It's like you need a permanent scar because you couldn't just throw it in.
I mean, he's already got one. I mean, he mentions it in those endings.
That's true.
When he's in the Shire, that the stab wound from the Witch King still hurts, So that guy has gone through some shit, for sure. But yeah, talking of the ending, yes, it could be seen as too long, but the acting is pretty exceptional, I think, from all four of the actors playing the hobbits. Like, really amazing stuff. And you can really feel like the raw emotions coming, especially from Frodo. The fact that he has to say goodbye to everyone. Like, Elijah Wood doesn't cry, I don't think, but he's always like on the edge of crying. I feel like in any moment, like for the whole time. But I think he's definitely made peace with what he has to do, and that he's completely spent emotionally. You can really feel that on his performance. With his performance,
he's like an exposed nerve, and that's what I love.
Yeah.
He's always on the verge of collapsing due to all these emotional pressures. So, it's nice that at the end they like send him off to like the old folks home, basically.
For the elfish old folks home. Yeah. But I think my favorite moment from like the four Hobbit actors is when they're all at the pub in the Shire and they don't say anything to each other. Whereas like at the beginning of the Fellowship, they'll all be like having an amazing time, but they all just like give each other these little looks as if to say, we did it. And they're just like processing the enormity of what they've just achieved and just appreciating the pint that they're drinking. I just really love that really quiet moment around that table for them. And then Sam sees his future wife.
They've seen some stuff at that point. It's like the soldiers who were in war coming back home. Like, you're not like everyone else anymore in that didn't go to war. You're changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Favorite performance for you, Brian? Who are you going for?
Ooh, this is tough.
Yeah.
This is really, really, this is a tough one. Man, this is a struggle. I'm going to say Elijah Wood, but it's
Okay.
very close with Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah.
You know, they're neck and neck, but Elijah gets just slightly more emotional things to do. So I'm going to give him the edge, whereas like a lot of Viggo Mortensen's are more quiet and subdued.
Yeah, I think he's got to bring this very stoic quality to this character, and he's got to try and bring out a level of emotion that fits the epicness of this story, as well as keeping this very stoic nature to his character, which I found really interesting how he kind of balanced that out. I kind of got to go with Sean Astin. To me, I just feel like he's just really raw in this. He's going through a lot because obviously, like, Gollum accuses him of lying, and he has to show a lot of anger and raw emotion in that sense as well. And it's just, and that scene where he just basically lifts up Frodo and picks him up and walks him up the Mount Doom, the side of Mount Doom, was like another epic moment where really his acting really shone for me. And of course, Elijah Wood, so good in this as well. But yeah, ultimately Sean Astin, I think. Acting score for me, this is so impressive across the board. I mean, if we did the podcast like on this film like tomorrow or next week, I might have picked a different performance. I don't know. But today it's Sean Astin. But acting score, it's really good. I'm going to go 9.5.
I gave Fellowship a 10, so I got to give this a 10. There's not a false.
Oh, you gave Fellowship a 9, I think.
Oh, I gave it a 9? All right. Then I will go 9.3.
Okay.
But there's not a false note. It makes me want to cry. It makes me cry. So I love it. I wouldn't change. I wouldn't recast anything. I think it's perfect. I love it.
Yeah. This could be very close to the top. Right, let's add up the scores then for The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King.
Math.
Yeah. Yep, we have a new number one spot for the leaderboard for 2024, and that is Return of the King with a score of a whopping 57.4. That beats out The Lighthouse. Very well deserved, frankly.
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah. Whereas the Fellowship of the Ring gets 52.5. Yeah, both incredible films. An incredible trilogy, frankly. Yeah, so Return of the King wins quite comfortably. Next episode, as
I will say, Fellowship had a bit of a disadvantage because I'm someone who has never loved that movie the way other people have. And right. I told my friend, me and him fight about Fellowship all the time. He's my co-host on Reviewing History. I told him I was doing this show, and I was like, you know, I don't like Fellowship. And me and him have been going at it for days. So,
right.
Nice. If Fellowship was in an uphill battle with someone else, it probably would fare a bit higher. But the film has just never clicked with me.
That's fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Right, first episode of next year, as Nosferatu is coming out. We are talking Vampire Films 2, because we've already done an episode on vampire films in the past, and I believe that was Thirst versus Let the Right One In. So it'll be interesting to see what vampire films we go with. Yeah, just another thing to say, I'm slowing down a little bit for next year. A lot of stuff going on for me next year, so I will be going down to one episode a month just to balance things out in my busy life. But hopefully it'll give me more room to do more spoiler specials, because I haven't done that many spoiler special episodes of recent releases. So hopefully, and as we've got more Marvel movies coming out, I do love my Marvel movies, so hopefully spoiler specials on those as well coming soon next year. Brian, you have been incredible. Thank you for coming on at such short notice. This is your opportunity again to tell us about your podcast, and where can we find you guys?
So, thank you again for having me. Again, I got to apologize to you and the listeners. I'm sick right now, so you didn't get A level Brian. You got like C plus level Brian, but I tried my best. So my
pretty
podcast
A level
is called.
to me. We'll get you on again.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. Do you ever do any Bond stuff?
Bond, James Bond. Yeah, we can do. Yeah, we have done in the past.
I'm a big Bond fan, so
Same.
I don't know if you can see behind me. You'll see there's a Moonraker poster, and you'll see a signed picture of George Lazenby. On the other side, I'll redirect. You'll see that is a Thunderball poster. So I love my Bond, and it's harder to see, but there's a bunch of Bond Funkos on the wall behind me. But regardless, my podcast is called Reviewing History. We go through historical movies. We tell you what's real and fake in them as we make a bunch of jokes and have fun. I'm much funnier there because I'm usually not sick. So check that out. We'll tell you what's real and fake and stuff as we go through it. It's a good time. It's fun. It's light. But the real reason, and that's everywhere. That's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, you can find Reviewing History. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. You could also go to bandcamp.com. You could search for Reviewing History. You could put in the Christmas Freak Off or just Reviewing History, and you'll see all of our Christmas episodes. It's $5 for this year's. It's called the Christmas Freak Off. You get 4 hours of Christmas comedy laughs. I can't recommend it enough. I think you guys will have a lot of fun if you listen. And if you don't, I apologize. And we also have a bundle where half the money goes to St. Jude, and that is called This Ain't No Whack Christmas. That's last year's. And we have a bundle with both Christmas pods. So if you want some good Christmas laughs for only $5, bandcamp.com, Reviewing History. Thank you again for having me.
Excellent stuff. Right, it's time to say goodbye, people. It is goodbye from Brian. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And it is goodbye from me. I am just going to check all the little tunnels that I've got in my house just to check there are no giant spiders around. Bye-bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.